Hello everybody, Brad Johnson here. In this video, I'm going to be talking about adopting suffering and the natural laws. Now, firstly, looking into the first topic, representing adopting suffering. Now, what does that mean? Why in the world would I ever want to adopt suffering in my life? Well, because it's all part of programming. So when we look at everything of who we really are, anything that causes us discomfort, anything that causes us struggle, conflict, suffering, none of that exists within us. That's the important thing to understand. When we're looking at what suffering truly is, it represents artificial influence through the environment, through externals. It's something that is melded within ourselves based upon our own intention to empower it. So, of course, as I've talked about, we empower everything within our life. And we, of course, empower everything that represents debilitating struggle, conflict, suffering. So everything that you have gone through that represents suffering, struggle, conflict, barriers, belief systems, hardships, challenges that lead into despair, depression, anxiety, fear, trauma, everything that I could basically name under the sun that basically is out of harmony with ourselves. That is what we have adopted. The entirety of suffering has never been a natural form. It's never nature. Our nature has and always will be happiness. Happiness has always been our way. But we come upon a world like this and we indulge ourselves in the artificial systems that this particular world has been programmed with by a diluted mankind, where we are being placed with these particular types of programs that is meant to keep the majority of people in a state of great suffering, while the few benefit from the many who are going through suffering. Of course, we know this story as well too. But that's simply the nature of suffering. It's something that we have adopted. It's not the real. It's not even a part of us. It's just something that we have given so much attention to, given so much of our power to, that we now adopt this and thinking that I can't live without suffering. I have to struggle. I need to survive. If I don't survive, well then I'm facing rejection, I'm facing abandonment, I'm facing abuse, I'm facing addictions, and I'm using all these traumas that I don't know I have to try and cope with a world that is, what I believe, drowning me in this state of struggle and suffering. But it's always adopted. So just like we may adopt a new puppy, like we may adopt a new kitten, it's not part of our family, but again, it becomes part of our family. We make it so. Well, the same thing goes with these emotions. The same thing goes with these mental traumas. Same thing goes with the survival programs. We make it into ourselves. And we feel that we have to hold on to it because we don't really see throughout the world as we walk about, as we drive about, as we go throughout the world. I think, well, everybody else is suffering, so I guess I have to suffer. And that's a program within itself. What is everybody else doing, right? It's the monkey see, monkey do. But as long as we continue to adopt this suffering, we're never going to move into what we truly are, and that's happiness. So, again, as I've talked about, you are here for one particular reason. That one particular reason is happiness, because you are happiness. We have become so contaminated and artificialized with all of these programs that have tried to tell us, oh, that's how humankind is. That's just our nature, is that we're greedy, we're selfish, we're arrogant, we're ignorant, we're conflicting, we're separate, self-conscious. No, these are all programs. None of this is humanity. None of this is you at all. Humanity holds such a greatness to itself, but we haven't been able to explore that because we've been battling with these artificialized programs that are responsible for creating a slave culture. Once you are able to break out of those programs, what remains is the happiness that you are. Brad, is it possible to break out of these programs? It's exactly why I'm here. Exactly why the YouTube channel is here as well too. This YouTube channel is here to offer a lot of free practices to helping you break free. So what do those entail? Well, as I've talked about before, we have the BCR technique. We have the cord removal healing. We have prana transmission technique. We have conflict elimination. And of course, we have the release ball method. These are all just simple techniques, templates, that when you start to use it and you're able to surrender and let all these things go, what happens more and more over time is that you become naturally immune to the suffering programs. The survival programs are no longer able to touch you anymore. You develop a natural immunity to them. How do I adopt a natural immunity? Because when I start releasing them, I see them for what they really are. I realize that this is all false. I realize it's all fake. It's like watching the magician with all their illusions, trying to saw a woman in half. Was that woman ever sawn in half? No. It's nothing but trick. It's nothing but smoke and mirrors. It's all trickery. Well, that's exactly the same with suffering. Suffering is not real. We try to make it real, but when we see it for what it really is, it's nothing but trying to saw the women in half trick, right? Got two boxes trying to saw two women in half, but neither of them are being sawed in half. We open the door and say, oh my God, she wasn't even in the box. These were just mirrors. Well, there you go. It's the same thing with suffering. We try to feel that suffering is in the world. We try to feel again that we're going to spirit. Of course, we make it that experience. We tell ourselves, I'm suffering, I'm in pain. Your experience is trying to make it real, right? And for yourself, as long as you give validation to that experience in some shape, way, or form, you will make it real. But see, without you, that experience cannot be real. That situation cannot be real. That suffering cannot be real. The only reason it impacts you is because of your validation of it. And that's what you learn to let go of, to surrender to release. When you do something like the prana transmission technique or the release ball method, you learn that this was never real. If I'm able to leave my body every single night when I go to sleep, is my body real? No. It's the idea that I can leave the body. I can completely forget about who I am through this personality every single night I go to sleep. My personality itself is not the real, because I forget about that every single night I go to sleep. What happens when I go into deep sleep, where I just don't recall anything? I don't recall the body, I don't recall the personality, I don't recall the mind. What about that? Well, that's telling me that the mind itself is not really real, right? It's just all of these things that we have given our power, that we have given our authority to. And when we see other people suffering in the world, then again, we feel like we have to suffer along with them. But that again is just a program. Rather, love and compassion is the way of helping those who are suffering. Not to feel like they're in the low tide here, so I guess I need to be in the low tide as well, right? They're in the pit here, so I guess I need to throw myself in the pit as well too and suffer alongside them. That becomes a program. That becomes guilt, right? That's not the answer. Rather, pick them up. Show the love and the compassion and the joy that you truly are, the peace that you naturally are, and pick them up. And that is what's going to help to resolve the suffering within you, because you're only suffering because you're seeing them suffering and you're reciprocating their suffering, right? It's that reciprocation. Rather, I give my love, I give my support, I give my compassion to them, and they see this and they take my hand, because all I'm doing is I'm warming them up with that love, that support, and that compassion. And now we rise up together. That's beautiful. That's wonderful. Because you see each and every single being as yourself. You see everything as yourself. You identify with every single atom that exists. And as long as you continue to do that, you are moving yourself into the true nature of yourself. And what does that mean? Your happiness, your bliss, your peace. That's who you are. That's your true nature. So how do we get into that? Well, we abide by the natural laws. Well, what are the natural laws? Everything that represents a subject, everything that represents life, everything that represents livingness, a living being, everything that constitutes how we live life here represents the natural laws. So, there is a law of your own body. There is a law of emotions. There is a law of mentality. There's a law of thinking. There's a law of equivalence. There's a law of change. There's a law of cause and effect. There's a law of time and space. Okay? There are these universal laws that we often refer to. But really, there are laws within laws within laws. It goes on and on. I would spend goodness knows how long to try and read off every single law that exists. Because as long as there is a subject pertaining to life, there's a law with it. Or Brad, how in the heck am I ever going to align to the natural laws when there are countless of them? Because they all follow a certain balance. Okay? And that balance comes to the idea of stillness, silence, surrender. The stillness, the silence, and the surrender of yourself is abiding in all of the natural laws. It is when you are no longer perturbating the ether. What the heck does that mean? Well, when we look at the ether is the drape, it is the veil that enables all thought to come together because of the disturbances that take place through the ether. So everything that represents thought is a perturbation, a disturbance that occurs throughout the ether. And the ether is manifesting these thoughts into physical reality, materialization, as it were. And we have hundreds, if not thousands, of thoughts all the time that are constantly perturbating the ethers. And that is what is manifesting the world, the way of life as we see it. It's thousands, millions, billions, trillions, quadrillions of these perturbating thoughts that exist all throughout creation that make creation what it is. What we would understand as sacred geometry, for example, would represent the effect of perturbation of thoughts. Okay? This is why we see geometries and they're beautiful, they look amazing, they look wonderful, but they're still thoughts that are rippling as disturbances throughout the ether. The ether is the medium between the material and between spirit, what we could call the material and intelligence, right? Intelligence is the unmanifest. The material is the manifest. So, by us working with thoughts through intelligence, intelligence is manifesting these thoughts through the ether. And through the ether, these thoughts are perturbating. They are materializing through the material world. So what we're learning how to do is to harmonize ourselves with the natural law. Again, it's the 3 S's: stillness, silence, surrender. Okay? So this is where we're just getting ourselves nice and still, keeping the spine nice and straight, taking a deep breath in, taking a deep breath out. Just do that with me right now. Take a deep breath in. Hold it just for a moment. And let it out slowly. And relax. So through that moment that you had, just working with that deep breath, was there a single thought within your mind? I'm going to basically tell you, I don't think there was. Okay? That's the idea of how you have been able to still the ether. That's how you've been able to silence the ether. That's how you've been able to surrender the ether. Because the ether within you has been silenced. There's no perturbating thoughts. Nothing is disturbing your natural intelligence, to which the ether functions as that bridge, that medium, that link between intelligence and the material, between Purusha and Prakriti. Okay? So when we silence that, when we go into the stillness, and like I said, this doesn't have to involve meditation. Meditation is great, But this is not really meditation. When you're going into surrender, it's not meditation. Meditation often relates to the mind. It can represent the idea of sensory withdrawal. It can represent the idea that we're focusing on an object, that we're absorbing ourselves into an object, and that we're absorbing ourselves into the cusp of the mind, or samadhi. That's really what meditation represents. Meditation is more for the mind. It's not a bad thing. I meditate quite a bit myself. There's nothing wrong with it. Okay? But what I'm talking about here is surrendering. Surrendering doesn't involve the mind. Okay? The mind is nothing more than a matrix. It's a bubble. It's a bubble that represents a contingency of thoughts, feelings, emotions, and sensations. So when you step beyond and behind the mind, where you're just in that silence, just like you were with that deep breath, and you remain there, the ether becomes quiet. It's like looking at a still pond. There's no more ripples in the pond. There's no pebbles being thrown in that pond. There's no drops landing into the pond from the sky. The pond is now completely serene. It's now completely still. And in that moment, you are in harmony with the natural laws. Every natural law has a center point. And the more that you are remaining within that center point, the entire pond becomes still. And that is you in harmony with the natural laws. Now, when you're in that stillness and a thought comes, that thought is that one single ripple throughout the pond, that only magnetic. And I refer to this as having a pure thought. You have a pure thought when you're still. And what generates from that one pure thought, that effortless thought, is a miracle. Okay? Miracles are manifested through you being in harmony with the natural laws. It's the effect. It still represents a perturbation, but it's the idea that you have silenced everything else and the only power is in that one effortless thought. And that is where something comes in very, very quickly. So, Brad, what are you saying that I need to do to have that type of miracle? Get yourself quiet. Stay in that quiet until you really feel that peace within yourself. Then once you feel that state of peace, as I've talked about, we go into the low idle state. We go into a subtle state of being, right? We feel that peace. A thought may just come out. It's a simple thought. Oh, I'm thinking of my best friend Joe, right? As soon as I have that thought, my phone starts to vibrate. And all of a sudden, my best friend Joe texts me. It's like, oh my goodness, I just thought of you like literally 2 seconds ago, and you just texted me. There's a miracle, okay? Or I may feel like there's a new work that I want to get involved with, and I'm thinking about that work, that pure, effortless thought that comes in about, I'm going to do this for my work. And then a very, very short time later, opportunities pertaining to that work show up right in front of you. People you haven't seen in a while, work that you want to have an opportunity to explore, financial situation that you want to bring into your life. All of these things, whatever they may be, come very, very quickly because that's the energy, that's the ripple that's going across the still pond. It's that single, effortless, pure thought that comes together. So what you're doing is you're silencing the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of perturbated thoughts that have been overwhelming the ether, that have basically been causing it to throb and swell, and now the water goes clear. And there's just that one effortless thought. Should you want to create a miracle, you don't have to. You can stay and remain completely in peace. That's fine as well. But to have that miracle comes from you abiding within the natural laws, which means you're getting still, you're getting silent, you're surrendering. So when I'm talking about stillness, what do I mean? Keep yourself still. Keep yourself still physically. Keep yourself still mentally. Keep yourself still emotionally. When I'm talking about silence, what am I talking about? No inner chatter. Nothing internal, nothing external that is causing you to chatter, that is causing you to be active, right? So we're silent. We're not active. We're not trying to run a marathon. We're not doing anything of that nature, okay? We are being idle. This is why I say you're going into the low idle. You're going into the subtle state of being. And then finally we go into surrender, which means what? We drop everything. We let everything go. We realize that we are nothing. We realize that we are the unmanifest. We realize that we are the creative force rather than a created force, a manifesting force. We have the power to manifest, yes. That all comes through our intelligence. But it's for you to abide in the unmanifest. It's for you to know that you are simply I am. I am the I am. That's the surrender. Everything gets dropped. Everything gets relinquished. Everything is let go of. And you abide within surrender. And by doing all three of those things, you are in harmony with the natural laws. That is therefore what can bring forward miracles, or again, to simply abide in your peace. And as you remain there, wherever these tendencies representing the adoption of suffering comes together, you're able to acknowledge them. You know that they're there. By acknowledging, all we're doing is we're aware that they're existing. We're aware that we've been carrying them. It's like when we have a basket. We see that we got some of this rotten fruit in here, and that represents the suffering tendencies. We're pulling everything out of that basket. Okay, there's this. Here's something here. Here's something of anger, sadness, fear. Here's something of my traumas, abandonment, rejection, abuse, addiction. Okay? Wanting security, wanting control, wanting approval, wanting escape. And I'm letting all of that go. I'm surrendering to it all. Just like what we do in the release ball method. We let it all go. We take all the rotten fruit of the basket. We hold it up. This is not a part of me anymore. Shh, watch it vanish. This is not a part of me anymore. Shh, watch it vanish. This is not a part of me anymore. Shh, watch it vanish. So we're holding that basket with all this rotten fruit because it represents suffering, and we're watching it vanish as we let it go, as we surrender to it, as we release it, as we check in. Does this problem exist within me anymore? Nope, it's completely gone. Letting it go. This is it, guys, and I can guarantee you, if you don't do this, the ability for you to end your suffering will be impossible. I can guarantee you that. So many are trying to look for externals, trying to find some type of external object, trying to find some form of external technology to alleviate their suffering. It's not going to happen because that's all mind. Okay? Nothing in mind can liberate you. Only your ability to surrender these tendencies is your ability to liberate yourself, to be free, to abide within the natural laws, to go into the sweet silence, stillness, and surrender. If you don't do this, your ability to end suffering will not happen. It's not possible. That's why I'm giving this to you guys. Because I've spent many years trying to look at saying, can I liberate myself from the mind? And I've tried all kinds of things. Nothing ever worked. The mind is the medium to where suffering exists. In order for you to move past suffering, you need to move past the mind. You have to surrender to it. Go into silence. Go into stillness. And this is the way. It's the only way. And I haven't been able to find anybody else. So I talked to tens of thousands of people for many years. No one's ever been able to say, oh, Brad, this thing exists in the mind and it took away my suffering. Nope. Not one person out of the tens of thousands of people I've talked to, even get up to about 100,000 right now, that I've talked to, has ever brought something to me that says, here's an object, it took my suffering away. Nope. Because it can't. And people who feel that they can, those things are short-lived. Oh yeah, I went and I did this. I did a dance. I sang a song. I sung a mantra. And that helped to alleviate my suffering. For a little bit, and then it came back again. Okay? Like I said, the only way is through the nature of surrender. Surrender is the key to alleviating all of your suffering that you have adopted. Okay? Because again, we acquire all of that suffering through validation. We make it a part of ourselves because we think it's it's part of a way of life, but it's not. It continues to recycle itself again and again because, again, it took the mind to bring that in, and we have to move beyond the mind to clear that away, to surrender to it, to release it, to let it go. You cannot resolve a problem that is triggered through the mind by the mind. Can't be done, right? It's not about substituting, because if you're trying to substitute and say, oh, I'll turn a negative into a positive, well, then you're just stuck with a positive. But that positive is not balance, right? It might feel pretty good, but you're still not relieving the idea of that positivity, because that positivity will just bring forward some other form of negativity. You cannot use polarity to balance. That's why it's called polarity. It's an extreme, whether it's negative or whether it's positive. The key is surrender. I've been talking about this for years, and this is the way. That is how you alleviate, that is how you surrender everything pertaining to suffering, and how you are able to do that is through abiding in the natural law. Silence, stillness, and surrender. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll speak to you again in the next video. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaskar, and may it be well with you. Bye for now.